Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining this Q&A for The Light Inside. Before we get started, I've just got a couple of housekeeping things. So firstly, my name's Jesse. I'm the director of the film. And I just want to say this is set up to be a webinar. So basically you can see us, but we can't see you, and nobody can see you, in fact. But if you want to put any questions or comments to us, I believe we've already got a couple coming in, which is great. You can do so in the chat box to the right of your screen, and you'll need to sign into your Gmail account to do this. Or you can email us at harry@hiharry.co.uk, and you should be able to see that email address at the bottom of your screen. And finally, another way you can comment is leave a comment for us is to click on the comment button in the Open Collective reminder email you will have been sent. Hope that makes sense. That's the housekeeping out of the way, and I'm now going to hand over to Dr. Bruce Jones, who's going to get the ball rolling.
Thanks, Jess, and a really good explanation of the complexities of this. My name's Dr. William Bruce Jones. I'm a consultant psychiatrist, and I've had the great privilege of being involved with this project from inception. I'm going to introduce the panel here, but when I do that, just try and imagine all the other contributors to the film kind of standing behind us. Their contribution as important as any of us. So I'll start with Caroline at the end there, who is a fellow contributor. Caroline's overcome significant mental health problems and is now working with a local health and social care commissioning group to try and facilitate the changes that we all need in mental health care. And next along is Kate, who's the Chief Executive of Bath Mind, our really important partner in this project. And Jess has already introduced himself as the writer and director of the film. So I'm going to start some questions, and then any that come in, I'll pick those up too. So I'm going to start with Caroline as a fellow contributor.
Spot, yes.
And I just, because we both contributed to it and others have too, and you're doing some really important work in the job that you do now. And I just wonder how you think this film might help, and in what ways it might help. Might it help the dialogue around mental health, help people to come forward and talk about their problems? What do you think?
I think, Bill, it's a really powerful film which has been amazing to be part of. And I honestly can put my hand on heart and say if I'd seen this film when I was in my darkest of mental health challenges, it would have really helped me to find my light, trust in myself. I think that in our society it's often the case that people feel shame, as came across in the film. They don't want to talk about how they're feeling, but I think this film shows the true reality and humanity of having a mental health challenge. It puts it out there. It enables people to feel I'm not alone, I don't need to be isolated, I can ask for help, and I can really express how I feel with my loved ones and professional people that are listed on the Light Inside website. So I think it's a real opener. I think it truly does shine light on an area that really is so misunderstood, but I think it brings a lot of hope for people, and it's okay just to say who they are and where they're at in their journey, and there's no shame in that at all.
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought up the issue of shame, which is so important in this area, and it's touched on in the film, and there might be people who will ask questions or make comments about that. Kate, we've known each other a long time, and the partnership with Bath Mind has been really, really important to this project. Without it, it couldn't have gone ahead. I've got a sort of vague kind of question for you, which is about how can communities help support each other and perhaps prevent the development of mental health problems? I know we say in these challenging times, and it's a bit hackneyed, but they are.
They are, yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's very much picking up on areas that Caroline has touched on. I think it's that recognition and acceptance that it is really important to talk, and it is okay not to be okay. And there's something about that permission to just to perhaps have a not great day, and get that support from others, and just give people time and space to just work through those issues. I think that's really, really important. I think connectivity and engagement is also really, really important. You know, we really need to understand what we mean by community and ensure that there is that community support around us so that we can get our time to develop and move on. I think that's not there enough at the moment. You both touched on the stigma and the shame, and I think that's still very much prevalent around us. And I think there is that time, and it's okay, it takes time. And there's something about being kind to others, but also about being kind to ourselves, and that was touched on in the film big time.
I'm interested in the issue of stigma because, as we all know, there's been a lot about mental health and mental well-being in the media, lots of celebrities getting involved and so on. And to my mind, they often touch on mental well-being. I don't want to kind of be overly critical about that because that has its place. The importance of this film to me is that it touches on the experience of really serious mental illness, mental health problems. Do you agree with that, Kate, do you think?
Yeah, I absolutely do. And I think it's about ensuring that there is that support early on so we can absolutely be there for people at those early stages of their journey. And I think people touched on that in the film, but it is absolutely looking at that higher end of people really struggling and needing that support.
Yeah. Okay. Before we move on to Jess, are there any questions that have come through? Or do you want to give it a minute?
Yeah, no, we've got a few ones in here. We've got one from Phil asking about the process of the camera setup and the kind of behind the scenes footage.
Okay, so that's a really good question because I loved that when I first saw it, which is about the initial bit of seeing the process of filmmaking. So there is one obvious person to take that question, Jess.
And was that intentional? Was the question as well?
Great. Well, thanks for great question, Phil. Yeah, it was absolutely intentional, and my reasons for framing the film in that manner were a couple, really. Three, I think. Firstly, there is, without wishing to sound vain about this at all, but there's obviously an autobiographical element to the story, although it's of course much broader than just being about the experience I had. But it felt like an honest way in to the issues would be to show us making a film about what this film is. There was another related to that is the idea, I think, of sort of just being open and honest about everything. I didn't want to take the audience on a sort of illusory journey. I wanted to be very open about what we were doing. So it made sense to show that there was a behind the scenes, that we weren't in a sort of fictional world journeying through a tunnel. Where is this tunnel? Where is it set? No, we were in reality. But that then in turn gave rise to the idea that by setting the film up as, quotes, in the real world, my hope was then that as we journeyed into the tunnel and began to hear the incredibly candid and moving testimonies from all our contributors, that we might start to forget that sense of reality. And as the voices, you'll recall in the middle of the film, It happens a bit at the entrance to the tunnel, but then more so halfway through the tunnel, just prior to the candle going out, all the voices kind of crescendo into a loud chorus. And what I was trying to create there was, if you like, a metaphor. I'm trying to give the audience a hint, a glimpse of what suffering a mental health problem might be like. It's metaphorical. I mean, the truth is that in the real world, it's a lot harder than anything in the film. But I wanted to create a kind of metaphor for losing one's sense of orientation, of reality, of groundedness. And at that point, of course, the candle goes out, and for a moment we feel temporarily completely lost. And so I'm hoping that by that stage in the film, the audience has completely forgotten about the opening and the fact that there's a film crew at work, and that they're now completely lost in this world, which at that point is very dark. But then we exit that state of being and return to the tunnel's exit and back to reality. So, sorry, that was a rather convoluted explanation, but I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, it really does make sense. And I guess for me, it's also, you talked about the reality. It's really important to emphasise that all of those testimonies, all of those stories, those narratives, they're all real.
Yeah.
They are none of them fictional, and that's an important part of that, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So Jess, I'll stick with you and ask a question of you, if I may. We've also known each other a long time, which is great, and I've had the privilege of following the films that you've made, and you've made some really poignant, personal films, short films that you've made, and they've all seemed to touch on the idea of being alone, about mental illness, about alienation, all of those things. This film, which feels like a culmination of that, says something about how you have understood what coming through that is. I may be talking out my hat, but have you got any comments about that?
So I think it's fair to describe it in that way, Bill. I mean, I have also worked on other films, documentaries about other people and artists that aren't perhaps in that thematic vein. But you're right, with the fiction work, it has been like that. And I think quite early on for me with this project, I suppose what was really liberating for me personally was embracing it in the documentary form. So my starting point was, I think, to express something of what I had been through personally. I think, that's quite common, quite normal for artists from whatever discipline. That the initial impulse is a desire. Simply put, it's a desire to express something. But as I began to develop the kind of concept for the film, this idea of a light inside, that part of you that only you can carry, that can sustain you through the darkest times, I knew that was true for me, but the question in my mind was, is it true for other people? Would this resonate with anybody else? I knew what had got me out of difficulty, and that's not the only thing that got me out of a hard place. Obviously, I received a huge amount of help and support, love and support from friends, family, medical professionals such as yourself, and I couldn't have got better without that support. But nevertheless, there was a part that was something only I could do for myself, and I wanted to see if there was truth in that for other people, and also more broadly, whether other people might also resonate with this idea of using that inner light or following that inner light to return to a place of well-being or evolve through to a better place of well-being. And documentary is an amazing art form for that, because you can learn from the people you interview, essentially. And I learned a huge amount working on this film. I learned so much. Part of the design about going through a tunnel and hearing voices, of course, was also, it enabled us, it was partly strategic in that it enabled me to offer all our contributors complete anonymity if they wished it. So not everybody who speaks in the film necessarily appears in that end group portrait, and that's their choice, and there are very good reasons why people may choose not to have appeared in that shot. But I wanted to give people that anonymity, but it was the option of that anonymity. But it was during those interviews that I realised, yes, it did resonate. This concept did resonate, but the real privilege for me in making the film was that what on one level is quite it's a simple concept, really, isn't it? We're going through a tunnel and we're going through a dark place and we're coming out to light at the end of it. But making it a documentary and incorporating people's responses to that concept stops it from being cliched, I hope. It's what the contributors say that lends nuance and depth and truth, and that's it. It's their words that are the heart and substance of this film.
Personally, and I know probably speak for all of us, that we're really grateful for you having had the courage to go through with this project.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go to Harry, but think about any questions you want to ask me, because that's fair. So Harry.
Yeah, so we've got one from Georgie asking about the kind of, do we find that younger people were more open to talking about mental health? E.g., did you notice an age difference in the way people talk to you about mental health?
Okay, so that's a really good question. And for those who didn't hear it, it's a question about whether younger people perhaps found it easier to talk about mental health and whether that was reflected in the interviews. I mean, I can kick off, but then I'll move on to the others. Certainly in my practice, I definitely find that, and thank goodness, young people are much better able to talk about their mental health problems. And, sometimes people are a bit cynical about that, but actually I think that holds out hope for people being able to find help, treatment if necessary, before things get too bad. So who else wants to?
Just from a Bath Mind point of view, I would absolutely concur with that, Bill. We have a fantastic relationship with all people who are involved in our services, but young people certainly find their voice much earlier and are very willing and feel confident to share those experiences and support others in their story as well. What I would say, interestingly though, and as a mum of teenage boys, the surprise was around the use of online services and online tools, and that's not a favourite of young people.
Okay.
They want face-to-face because their whole world is digital and online, and that's not what they want for
really
this. And it has been a really interesting journey for us on that one.
Oh, that's really interesting. Anyone else got any comments to make?
Could I ask you something, Bill?
Oh yeah. Oh no. Here we go. Thanks, Caroline.
I'll make it as tricky as possible.
Yeah, please do.
No, I was just wondering, when talking about like the light inside and working as a psychiatrist, how do you feel that could help your work with people?
Gosh, that's a really good question, and I kind of have to reflect on myself and how I manage both my clinical practice and the problems I've had. The clinical practice, I regret to say, is a lot about compartmentalisation, which is about just switching things off, which is helpful on the one hand, but that's clearly leaked into my own personal life and is unhelpful in that regard. But I think that notion of people finding their own pathway to a life that is more fulfilling, happier, a better life for them, that's always been part of my practice, and I think most psychiatrists. Strangely enough, we don't just peddle drugs, we think about things like that. So yeah, I mean, I think it's a really, really important concept, because sometimes, it's not one size fits all. People's light and what they're aiming for can be very different from what you think might be the right thing for them.
Yeah, that's important.
Yeah.
Could I ask you something, Bill?
Oh God, yeah. I mean, persecuted now.
Just following on from that,
Yeah.
It's you're uniquely positioned of us grouped here, in that you have both your own lived experience of mental ill health, and you're also a professional working to help others. In terms of like your reasons for being involved in the film, what impact do you hope that this film might have on your profession potentially?
Yeah, well, that's really important, because as you know, Jess, when I started out on this film, I was just the kind of hands-off consultant to the project. But the film had come at a time when I was recovering from a period of, real significant difficulties, and I quickly thought that maybe I should contribute. And a significant part of that is perhaps related to some of my early life experiences, was an understanding that shame is a really toxic thing that stops people getting the help that they need. And then I went on to think, if mental health professionals aren't able to talk about their own problems, what are we doing? And so I felt really quite strongly that I should contribute as well. And I hope in doing so it will encourage other people to do that, because there isn't shame. I've talked about shame being like a horrible kind of black ghosty like thing, but when you take it out into the light, it just disappears. So I just, I hope that other people will be encouraged and talk about those things.
Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think actually that's it for questions.
Great.
Yeah.
I think we're coming to the end. Have we got another one?
There was actually one that was a good ender, which was basically about what are the sort of hopes for the future, what are the next steps for the light.
Okay, well, we're coming to the end anyway, so thanks very much, everyone. But before we do go, I'm going to pass you back over to Jess, who's going to say a couple of things, I think.
Okay, thanks, Bill. And thanks, everybody, for your questions and for watching. Just on that question, our hopes are to grow the project further. And thank you to everybody who's donated so far. We really appreciate your donations. We just couldn't have got it this far without your help. So thank you. Our plans are, we want to firstly promote the film. So that will involve promoting it to festivals, and if we can, we'd like to attract distributors, so that we can get the film in the long term seen as widely as possible, both in the UK and abroad. Secondly, we want to further develop our website. If you visit our site, you'll see that there are links to our wonderful partner charity, Bathmind. So if you yourself feel that you'd like to reach out for help, you can do so through our website. Or you may know of somebody else who might be in difficulty. You can refer them to the site as well. So we'd like to add to the site, add connections like that. And thirdly, finally, we have this incredible archive of amazing interview, and we could only touch the surface of it in the film. As you've seen, it's only 20 minutes long, but we interviewed each contributor for an hour and a half or more. And there are some incredibly insightful things said in those interviews, real wisdom, not just about the difficulty of getting through mental ill health, but also more positively about the healing techniques and coping strategies that people have evolved or discovered or were taught that help them get to a better place. And by better place, I mean, I think it's important to reiterate that I'm not saying happy ever after. Better place, as one of our contributors puts it so brilliant in the film. He says, you know, the thing about getting out of a tunnel is not having to go back into that tunnel. There may be other tunnels, but it's gems like that that we'd like to pull out of our interviews and upload to the website as a series of 15 or so audio-only stories. So people in time to come will be able to go to the website, see a brief description of each story, you know, maybe 5 to 10 minutes each, and think, oh, that looks interesting. That feels a bit like maybe what I'm going through or what my friend's going through, and I'll have a listen to that one. So it'd be like a kind of online resource, if you like. So that's it. That's the plan.
Great. Thanks,
yeah.
Jess.
And perhaps also with Bathmind.
Oh,
Yeah.
Bathmind.
Yeah.
Yep.
How people can engage.
Yeah, absolutely. So go on to the Bathmind website. It's on the Light Inside website, and it's www.bathmind.org. Excuse me. And we've got lots of resources on there, and it'll tell you how you can contribute. And we'll be working really closely with Jess and Harry throughout the process and their journey as we take it hopefully wider, stratospheric.
Hurrah. Great. Nice, here we come. I mean. Okay.
Wrong one.
All right. Thanks very much, everybody. See you another time.
Yeah,
Take
Bye.
you.
Thank you.
Bye.